Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
I want to welcome several of our representatives here and invite them to say a few words. I'm not sure who's here. Michelle, you're here, and
Senator Wendy Harrison.
And Wendy Harrison is here. So great. Michelle, do you want to start? Great.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be in an indoor Westminster town meeting. It's been a while since we were together in the room. The last time we were together in this room, I wasn't your representative, but I'm starting my third year as a representative, representing Westminster. We've now been redistricted, so I'm also representing Rockingham and Brookline. And the first thing I'd like to say is I was requested to pass on regrets from Leslie Goldman, who is the other representative for our district. She was snowed in and the road hadn't been plowed, so she was planning to come today but was unable to make it. I wanted to just give you a couple of highlights about things that are happening in the House of Representatives. We do have a town meeting report in the back of the room, which you're welcome to grab if you would like to see some sample legislation that the committees have been working on. But I wanted to say just in general, in the House, we've done an awful lot of work in our committees on a variety of different topics, and most of them are still in process. We actually have not passed much legislation yet, so I'm hesitant to say too much about what we're doing because a lot of that is likely to change. Particularly, it will change after we send it to the Senate, and they have different opinions about some of the work that we've been working on. But some of the priorities that we have in the House, I believe, are also priorities in the Senate. We're working very hard on the idea of establishing a paid family leave program, which some other states in the United States have, but we haven't been able to implement it here in Vermont. And that is something that it looks like we're going to be able to move forward. We've been working really hard on workforce and housing issues, which I think are the two single biggest issues that are impacting the way of life in Vermont here. We have many, many employers in almost every sector who are not able to find employees to do the work that they need to run their businesses. And then sometimes they find people that they want to bring in to do that work, and those people can't find housing. So we're putting a lot of investment into a whole range of different options in terms of housing, both affordable housing, first-time home buyers, missing middle, whole range of different housing options, all of which I think are really important because if we don't have accessible and affordable housing, and we don't have people able to come and fill the jobs that we have here in Vermont, that's going to be really hard. So those are things that we have in process. We're not finished with them, but if you have more questions, I'm happy to give you more information about that one-on-one. I would like to say also that I have had a number of times people come to me and ask questions about a particular issue. So they'll write me a letter, they give me a phone call, sometimes send me a text, and they say, hey, what's happening with the bill about trapping beavers? And there's a process that's not that complicated where you can learn about those without checking with me directly. I don't mind if you check with me, but as a social studies teacher before I came into office, one of the things that I did in the summer was I taught high school students about the legislative process. So I developed a workshop for the Governor's Institute called Making Laws, Making Change. And I taught people both how to maneuver the website, so if you're interested in an issue like beaver trapping, how do you find that bill and find out what the status is, and who is the person you want to contact if you have an opinion about that. So I would love to teach people in my community how to do that because people ask me about it, but I never have time to do the whole process one-on-one. So I actually have a flyer in the back. If you're interested in learning more about the legislative process, I'm going to offer 2 different workshops on Zoom just to help educate you about the process. And it's not partisan, it's not with an agenda, it's just to help you be a more educated population, and if you want to advocate, it'll make it easier for you to do that. So those are going to be in March and April, and people are welcome to join me on Zoom for those. Also, one other thing that I wanted to mention, if you're not aware of the legislators in the library, the 2 senators and your 2 representatives have been meeting monthly. The 3rd Saturday of each month, we meet at 10:30 a.m. at the Rockingham Library. And that's basically just an opportunity for you to share your concerns and then hear some updates about the kind of things that we're working on. And sometimes we can do a little bit of follow-up one-on-one with folks about specific concerns as well. So do keep in mind, as a representative, or in Wendy's case, as a senator, she'll be coming up next, one of our roles is to do constituent services. So if you have a problem with a state entity that isn't getting through, with the issues that you're concerned about, you can ask me and I can help with that. If you're having an issue with your unemployment not coming through, or your driver's license, or something dealing with a state agency, part of my job is to help you figure out who is the person who could actually address your issue and nudge them so that you get follow-up. So please don't hesitate to be in touch. If you would like to hear from me more regularly, I do send out a monthly update with some information both about legislation and events in the community. I'd be happy to add anyone who wants to be on that list to that list. But in the meantime, I think that's enough from me. And I would like to invite my new colleague, Wendy Harrison, who is one of our new state senators, up to give a little introduction herself as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, everybody. The course that you're going to do is wonderful, and I urge everyone to take advantage of that. That's terrific. So I'm Wendy Harrison. I'm new to the Senate. I'm not new to government. That's what I've been doing all of my life, mostly. The Senate is a very new place for me. I've been there 2 months now. I'm starting to get the hang of it. I'm on 2 committees. I'm on the Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs Committee, and the Institutions Committee. And in the Economic Development and Housing Committee, we've been working on housing because we know that that's a huge issue in Vermont. And what we did, we took a lot of testimony initially from builders, from employers. I mean, there are folks hiring at all levels of organizations. We heard from hospitals who had hired folks who weren't able to take the jobs, both nurses, people at high levels of management, who weren't able to take the jobs because they couldn't find housing. So housing is critical all over the state, and there's a lot of components to it. Builders are having issues. They point to Act 250. Act 250 is complicated because Act 250 is a process, as many of you know, and the intent of Act 250 was to protect the environment while allowing development in certain areas, in areas that are already developed, so that we maintain the character of Vermont, where we have, sorry, I keep touching this, I'll stand back, where we have hamlets, basically, and centers of development with farms and open space in between. That's what makes it a great place to live and a great place to visit. So Act 250 is credited with keeping that structure, which I agree with. Now, in certain cases, Act 250 can be a real barrier for folks. So what our committee did was look at the specific barriers, and so we made some changes, some suggested changes in the legislation that we passed out that we think will be very helpful in keeping the character of Vermont, but allowing more development, specifically housing. One of the things that we did, which will, if it passes, and it has a process to go through that I'll get to in a second, will mandate that all towns, wherever a single-family house is allowed, a duplex is allowed. So that's something I just want you to be aware of, because you may have opinions on that, and you have plenty of time to express your opinions. But that'll double, in theory, the amount of housing that we can have. And so that would allow, for example, if you have a big house, you could create an apartment in your house. Right now you can do ADUs, if you've heard of those, accessory dwelling units, those are allowed. So there's a lot to this bill, and I would be happy to talk to folks about it. We did pass that out of our committee last week, and we were really happy about that because we think it could be a very transformational bill. So that's now in the Natural Resources Committee, which will take a real hard look from an Act 250 perspective and then it'll come to the Senate floor, and then it'll go over to the House, and we'll see what happens there. So hopefully we'll have good news on housing by the end of the legislative session, which is only another 2 months. On the Institutions Committee, that committee works on the capital bill, which is all buildings in the state. We work with the state library, all of the water and sewer the water and sewer grants, barn grants, if you're familiar with those, historic preservation grants, those all go through that committee. So we actually have a fair amount of additional funding this year because of the federal funding. So it actually makes it more complicated sometimes to have more money than less money because we need to figure out what to do with it. So you've probably heard of the Clean Heat Standard, S5. I've gotten hundreds of emails and messages on that. And I'm sorry I can't respond to everyone during this session. I'm going to take time this week to get back to folks. But a huge concern of people on the Clean Heat Standard was that it's going to increase oil prices. There's a number, 70 cents a gallon, that's out there. We changed the bill since that first came out and put in a check back so that in 2 years, once the plan is completely fleshed out, because it's a pretty complicated plan, the legislature will have to vote again to adopt it. And obviously the public has an opportunity to express their opinions at that point. And in 2 years, we'll know much more what was going to happen. Now, for the folks who are in favor, and I am in favor of S5, voted for it. It was a big part of my campaign. I heard from people that we really want not just to protect the climate, which obviously is critical, but Vermont is a small state, but to protect our residents because the price of fuel oil is very volatile. So what's important about S5 is that it protects real people from very high prices. And it doesn't mandate that anyone switch. You can keep oil. That's a message that I don't think we conveyed as well as we could have. You don't have to get rid of your oil furnace. We're trying to find ways for lower income, moderate income folks to be able to winterize their homes, to be able to add other sources of heat so that you can have multiple sources of heat. So you keep the oil for the super cold days. You have air source heat pumps, you have there's clean wood heat. We didn't talk enough about that either. It's not that everyone has to do air source heat pumps. There's clean wood, which is part of the program too. So we have time, what I wanted to say, if you're in favor of it, we're still on track because the process always included this 2-year design of the system, because again, it's a very complicated system. So we're not slowing down. I just want to assure people who want us to stay on this path that we're not slowing down. We just added a check-in in 2 years. So those are the main things I wanted to let you know about. I'm really looking forward to learning more about what's happening in the town, in Westminster, because you guys have a lot going on. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Wendy and Michelle. We're lucky to have you. Okay. I think we'll begin with something fun. Is Craig Allen here? No. Craig, do you want to come forward? Yeah, I think so.
I went to school here. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Obviously, I'm a select person who is no longer going to be a select person. And I served for many years, and it's been a privilege to really get to know the town much better. Being raised in North Westminster, I didn't have a clue who anybody was in Westminster West. But I've come to really appreciate how they have such a bond and how much they want to volunteer and help out. And one of the things we've done probably poorly as a select board, we haven't tried to get more people involved with committees and get more people involved with what's going on in town. Because it shouldn't be just the select board making all the decisions. We've had a lot of decisions to make that were hard this year, and but every year, and I get the privilege of being the last year doing this, we get to choose volunteers of the year. These are somebody who's being recognized for volunteering and doing a lot for the town. And every year we get nominations for it. And this idea actually was started years ago by Bev Majors. I remember she was the first one to recommend it, and I thought it was a great idea. And so there's a plaque down there for the last, I think it goes back to 2003, because that's the year I got on, I think. But this has been, I really enjoyed as a select person, and the one easy thing that I enjoyed doing at the end of the year was going through the list. This year, we had to sit down and do it, and we had a list, and we had 2 names given to us by Pauline and Patty in the office. And it was, the minute we saw the 2 names, we said, this is the easiest decision we made this year. It really was. And I would like to say that this year, I don't even think, they volunteer so much that I don't even think I have to say their last name. If I said Peggy and John, could you please come up with that? They get a plaque. There's also a nice plaque down at the town hall with their name on it. They get a nice clock, and here, I want to thank you all for everything. They gave me a list of everything they've done for volunteer, and we don't have enough time tonight to sit here and read everything that Peggy and John has done for this town, but I really, really enjoyed getting to know them, and I really want to thank them very much for all the things they've done on this list. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, and congratulations, Peggy and John. Okay. You can't hear. Oh, Dad can't hear. Anyone else having trouble hearing? I'll speak as loud as I can, and I don't have too much confidence in the sound system. Try to make it work. Okay. Sure. Yeah, that'll help a bit. Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, we are now going to move into the substance of the meeting. We're going to start with an invocation, which is an adaptation of something that a town moderator, I think, in Corinth started many years ago, and Fletcher has adapted and picked up, and I think it's a wonderful little invocation. So let us start with that. Let us pause for a moment of silence and reflection. We are gathered together in civil assembly. We gather as a community in the oldest sense of the word. We gather to come together and try to make decisions about what is right, about what is wrong. Let us advocate for our positions, but not at the expense of others. Let us remember there is an immense gap between saying, I am right, and saying, I believe I am right. And that our neighbors with whom we disagree are good people with hopes and dreams as true and as high as ours. And let us also remember that in the end, caring for each other in this community is of far greater importance than any difference we may have. Thank you. Now, we will go review or a very brief summary of Robert's Rules of Order, because that is what we will be using to run this meeting, and all of us, including me, can use a little reminder of how they go. I should add that if there is a question, I've asked Ian Proctor to be parliamentarian. Thank you, Ian, for volunteering to do that. Okay. This is a quick little summary. Robert's Rules is the basic rules of order for this meeting, except where Vermont law takes precedence. An article must be moved and seconded by the body and restated by the moderator before it is under consideration. And I'm going to add that when you're moving an article and when you're seconding an article, could you please state your name? We had to do a little archaeological digging to remember a couple of seconds from last year. So if you could please do that, that would be helpful especially for the clerk taking the minutes. Articles may have only one associated amendment at a time, and amendments may have only one amendment. So you can sort of go only 2 levels deep. After you've spoken once on a particular article, you will not be recognized a second time during discussion on that article or amendment until all other voters who wish to speak on the issue are given an opportunity to do so. Division of the House can be requested by one voter before or after a voice vote. State law provides for a paper ballot vote on the request of 7 voters. Debate may be cut off by a motion to call the question, a second, and a 2/3 vote to do so. All motions, remarks, and discussion must be addressed to the moderator. I will do my best to recognize you in the order that you have raised your hands. You must be recognized to speak, even to call the question. State law prohibits consideration of articles that have not been warned. This means you cannot take binding action under the article Other Business. Reconsideration of an article is allowed by state law until a point is reached where another article is under consideration. My role as moderator is to help you accomplish the business you intend to do. Please raise your hand and ask questions if you don't understand what is happening. And that is that. Okay. We'll move on to the articles. And at this point, I think we'll start with the school district. So why doesn't the school district board come up, please, and representatives? Okay, Andy has helped figure out the roving microphone issue, so I'm going to ask for a volunteer who might be willing to run this microphone around to anyone any of the voters who would like to speak, who raise their hands or recognize and would like to speak. Do we have any volunteers as a runner? You would? Great, terrific. Okay. Article 1. Well, I'm going to read right from the beginning of the warning here. The legal voters of the Westminster School District, Town Fire District Number 3 in town are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Bellows Falls Union High School Auditorium in Bellows Falls, Vermont, Westminster, Vermont, I should say, on Saturday, March 4, 2023 at 10 o'clock in the morning to take action on the articles following Article 1. The meeting will be recessed to the Westminster Fire Station, Grant Avenue, Westminster, Vermont, to meet at 10 o'clock in the forenoon on Tuesday, March 7, 2023, for consideration of Article 1 by Australian ballot. The polls shall remain open until 7 o'clock in the evening, at which time the meeting will recess to meet at the Bellows Falls Union High School Auditorium at 8 in the evening, same day, Tuesday, March 7, 2023, to consider any remaining articles if necessary. So Article 1 is to choose all Town School District officers, Town Fire District Number 3 officers, and town officers by Australian ballot, Tuesday, March 7, 2023, from 10 o'clock in the forenoon, 10 a.m., until 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m. So please remember to vote on Tuesday and remind all your friends and relatives to do the same. Article 2, to hear reports of the town school district and take action thereupon. And I believe we'll start with a report by the chair of the school board, Cheryl Charles.
Thank you. Well, it's great to see everybody here in person and indoors again. Thank you all for making the effort to come out on this snowy day. Are you okay hearing me? Okay, great. I'd like to start by asking everyone here, the members of the school board, to introduce themselves. I'm Cheryl Charles, chair of the board, and let's begin actually with our superintendent of schools.
I'll use my teacher voice. I'm Andy Haas, superintendent of schools.
I'm Margie Kearns-Berry. I'm a Westminster board member.
I'm Karen Blanchard, and I'm also a Westminster board member.
I'm Charlie Hutchison. I'm the vice chair of the Westminster School Board.
I'm Team BLC, Westminster School Board member.
Great, thank you. So a brief report, and then we'll go to the articles. The first thing I'd like to ask you to do is to be sure to read the letter from the principal, Liz Hardy. She couldn't be here today, but there is a letter in the town meeting book from her. There is also a letter from this town school board that is informative, and I'd love to have you read that. Further, we provided a document that is a handout. Many of you have already. If you didn't get it, please do so. There are copies in the back. And it's really a frequently asked questions document, especially about the budget and the proposed articles that we're working on today. I think I'd start with, as we do in our letter, that this was so exciting to actually have the school open again for in-person instruction, where family members and community members could actually come to the school this year. So there has been throughout this school year, after a very challenging 2 years with the impact of COVID, a warmth, a sense of calm, a lot of joy, a lot of laughter. At the same time, there are a great many challenges still facing the children and youth of our community and their families. And that becomes evident in just difficulties that many of the children are having in regulating themselves, self-control, being able to focus, being able to sit still in school. So lots of good things happening, and let me just say there are a great many challenges as well. And so we've had the benefit of some federal monies to help us through the Elementary and Secondary Recovery Act that have allowed us to bring in additional resources to help with things like supporting the children and their teachers to maintain calm. It's It was just a great many strategies to reinforce both the social and emotional learning going on, which in turn then contributes to their academic achievement and their sense of well-being overall. So a great start to the school year, a good school year, and a great many challenges. When it comes to the budget itself, you'll see that there's an 11.5% increase from a $4.6 million budget to a 5.1. However, and when we get to the articles, are proposing that we use some of a significant surplus that has become available to us to reduce the actual cost of the budget to start this year, to reduce it by $300,000. So you'll see that, and we'll get into more detail about that. A question that you'll ask is, what's the source of the surplus? When Westminster was forcibly merged with Athens and Grafton, we're always quick to say, good friends in Athens and Grafton, but it never made any sense to have us be a school district when we're not even contiguous. At any rate, in those years that the 3 years that we were merged with Athens and Grafton, in fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, we ended up with about a $1.6 million surplus. What were the sources of that? Some miscalculations in the number of students for whom we'd be paying 7th and 8th grade tuitions. And secondly, a set of errors in the business office that overestimated the cost of health insurance for our employees. I think you've probably read in the Reformer and in other places there have been challenges in the business office for several years. That's now really resolved. We have an outstanding and highly experienced business manager, director of finance, Jim Vizina, who sent a message to us this morning to say he's buried in snow a little farther north of us, but would be available by phone if we needed to ask him a question. At any rate, the business office is stabilized, we have experienced people there, and that is turned around in a very, very positive way. So then what are the increases in the budget that we'll talk about in more detail? The state has agreed to and asked us to, therefore we have no choice, a 12.7% increase in health insurance benefits for our employees. We have an increase actually in the rate at which tuitions are being paid. In fiscal year 21, actually, let me go back to, not the year that we're in right now, but last year, the students in our community that went to the Bellows Falls Middle School, we were invoiced by Rockingham, initially at the rate of $16,000 per student, and then at the rate of $17,000 per student. This year, based on real costs for Rockingham and the education of the students at the middle school, we're being invoiced for $21,000 per student. That's a significant increase. That's hitting our current budget. And what we have done then, because we were not prepared for that during the current fiscal year, we're proposing to create a reserve fund going forward, and that's 60% of the overall increase in the budget that we're bringing to you here today. So those are just some highlights. I think one of the things I want to say about Wendy Harrison's comment about maybe some improvements in providing housing for people here. We always get the question about how stable is the student population. It's actually holding pretty steady, but one of the interesting things you'll see in that frequently asked question document is that our younger students, the pre-kindergarten through kindergarten, first, second grade, right through there, it's really the very youngest of the kids. We've seen an increase in the last 4 years. I can see some young parents in this meeting today. We're delighted that you're here. So we're actually seeing an increase in the youngers coming to the school, but we don't have housing for all the people that need and want to come to this community. So keep that in mind. And with that, we'll just go right into the articles, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. And I should note for the school board members, those two microphones should work. Yeah, if you have something to say. Okay, so we will move on to Article 3, which reads, shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District authorize and instruct its school directors and treasurer to borrow money if necessary on the credit of the town school district for its current expenses in anticipation of the collection of taxes and receipt of money due from the state aid and other sources. What is your pleasure? You don't have to read it. You could just say, I so move, if you prefer.
I so move.
Okay, Tina, and again, please say your name.
Oh, Team BLC, I so move Article 3.
Thank you, team. Article 3 has been moved, and is there a second? Seconded by Susan Harlow. So Article 3, shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District authorize and instruct its school directors and treasurer to borrow money if necessary on the credit of the town school district for its current expenses in anticipation of the collection of taxes and receipt of money due from state aid and other sources. Any questions? Any explanation necessary? I see none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, moving on to Article 4. Shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District apply the sum of $300,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance of $1,062,546 to reduce expenditures in the fiscal year 2024. What is your pleasure?
I would like to move the adoption of that article. This is Cheryl Charles.
Cheryl Charles has moved Article 4. Shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District apply the sum of $300,000 from the fiscal year 2021 fund balance of $1,062,546 to reduce expenditures in the fiscal year 2024? Is there a second? Seconded. Okay, great. Did you get that name, Pauline?
I did not.
Lynn Twiss. Great. We're being very careful to write these names down because it's important to get them. Okay. What is your pleasure? Cheryl, do you have anything to add? Or any explanation necessary?
I think I did.
Any questions? I see none. So we'll move on to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Article 5. Shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District apply the sum of $150,000 from the anticipated fiscal year 2022 fund balance of $608,575 to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2025?
I so move.
Okay, Charlie Hutchinson has moved Article 5. Shall the voters of the the Westminster Town School District apply the sum of $150,000 from the anticipated fiscal year 2022 fund balance of $608,575 to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, please say your name.
Ronald Boslam.
Ron Bosley. Thank you, Ron. Okay. Yes. Sarah has a question.
Yeah, I see in the report that the figure, at least printed here, is 608,375, not 575. Is that?
Yes.
Is that
Yes, it is. Well, Cheryl, do you want to answer that?
You did say 575, but it is 375.
Right, you said it 575, it is 375.
Oh, I misread it, I think is what we're saying. Okay, yes, it is 375. Yeah. So I will read it again just to try to clarify. Article 5, shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District apply the sum of $150,000 from the anticipated fiscal year 2022 fund balance of $608,375 to create a reserve fund to offset expenditures in the fiscal year 2025. I should probably wear my glasses.
Do I need to read the
No, I think we're all set. Okay, any explanation, Charlie or Cheryl?
Just one quick comment. When this was written, the audit had not been completed, so that figure is now a certainty. It's not an anticipated surplus. We can count on that surplus.
Great, thank you, Cheryl. Any questions? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. Ian, should I be rereading this motion right now in asking for a vote? We haven't changed anything. Not necessarily. Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Article 6. Shall the voters apply the sum of $100,000 from fiscal year 2021 fund balance and an additional $100,000 from the anticipated fiscal year 2022 fund balance to a dedicated reserve fund to be used for charges incurred when paying tuitions for 7th and 8th graders not budgeted? What is your pleasure?
I'm leaning over here. I vote that yes.
Oh.
I move yes.
Okay, Karen Blanchard has moved the Article 6. Shall the voters apply the sum of $100,000 from fiscal year 2021 fund balance and an additional $100,000 from the anticipated fiscal year 2022 fund balance to a dedicated reserve fund to be used for charges incurred when paying tuitions for 7th and 8th graders not budgeted? Is there a second? And your name? Oliver Brody. Thank you, Oliver. Okay. Does the school board want to offer any explanation to this? No. Okay. Great. Any questions from the voters? Seeing none, all those in favor, we'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Article 7. Shall the voters apply the sum of $520,000 from the 2021 fund balance and $250,000 from the 2022 fund balance to create a reserve fund for repairs or improvements to buildings including, although not limited to, enhanced security and energy efficiencies, and to authorize the board to expend such funds. What is your pleasure?
I'm Margie Kernsberry, and I'm so moved.
Thank you, Margie. Margie has moved Article 7, shall the voters apply the sum of $520,000 from the 2021 fund balance and $250,000 from the 2022 fund balance to create a reserve fund for repairs or improvements to buildings, including, although not limited to, enhanced security and energy efficiencies, and to authorize the board to expend such funds. Is there a second? Yes. Michelle, state your name.
Michelle Bosley.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. Is there any explanation from the board? None offered, unless there are any questions. Yes. I will go with
Robert Wickberg.
Robert Wickberg, Bob Wickberg.
$770,000 is a lot.
Wait, Robert.
And I'm trying to add up.
Bob, you're getting the microphone coming your direction.
Okay.
I always thought I was loud enough, but okay. $770,000 is a lot of money. Do you guys have a capital plan? In other words, do you know what you're going to do with this money? Do you know what improvements you need to make over the coming years, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the board, thank you, Bob. The board has been queried.
So it's got to just be behind the other microphones. You may want to step out.
Okay.
Otherwise, it only feeds back because it moves behind the moderator's microphone.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for that little tip. So, hello. Okay. So we do have some specificity in that we are looking at doing a couple of security enhancements at the school buildings, making a little entryway so that you're coming in through a double door instead of entering right into the building. The biggest expense that we're looking at is we're looking at doing some kind of a solar array on the building, which would be in the ballpark of $400,000. We've looked at a few, different things, wind power as well. We'd like to offset our expenditures of energy bills in the future. So we're looking at this as an investment in our energy efficiency into the future. So that's the biggest one. Yeah.
How big is the electric bill right now?
It's about $37,000 per year. But that, you can find it it's all laid out. I don't know exactly which page in mine, but it's about $37,000 per year. Am I right there? Yeah. At the one building, and then at the other building, $1,500.
So it would be about a 7.5-year payoff.
Yeah, it takes about 7.5 or 8 years to pay off, or to make back what we would expend. But we have the money now to do it. We do not have to borrow this money. This is a budgetary surplus. We can use it right now and invest it in offsetting these costs for the foreseeable future. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, why don't I go over here? Let's see, where is the microphone?
I'm here, but I don't see the hands. I'm going here.
No, over here.
Here, okay.
June Streeter, I was wondering if you knew where you were going to put these solar panels and if there's been an in-depth investigation into the health benefits to the children.
Thank you, June. Anyone on the board care to reply?
Hi, Charlie Hutchison again. We are in the initial stages of investigating exactly. Can you hear me? Initial stages of investigating exactly how and where the solar panels would be placed. There's two options. One is on the roof, And the other option is in the ample space behind the school, the Westminster Central School campus. To the best of my knowledge, there are no health issues associated with solar panels for children, but they would be separated so children would not have direct access to them at all. And so far as the payback issue again, energy costs will rise over the foreseeable future, but at current prices, we anticipate that we would get our investment back within 7 or 8 years, and then have another 30 or 40 years of free electricity, short of maintenance and so on, for the schools, for both campuses. Does that answer the question, ma'am?
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Any other questions? Yes. Out back, Molly, please state your name.
Molly. We did a lot of looking into this several times at the high school. One of the questions I've asked several times and nobody can answer it is what happens when they don't work anymore and how do you recycle them and are they recyclable? And the gentleman that wanted to bring them into the high school never came back after I asked him that question. So I think that's important to think about our future and our future kids and what you're actually going to do with these things after they stop working. I did quite a bit of homework myself on them, and I was not finding anything that was telling me they're going to last more than 20 years. So I think it's something you really need to think about. The other thing I heard was we were talking about taking playground area and put a solar array. This is a small town, beautiful little street we drive down. Is that really what we want to look at? I just want you guys to think about it because there's way more to it than just sticking some solar panels on some ground.
Thank you, Molly. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I guess I should ask, are we allowed to question what's been stated, or are we just only allowed to speak to the board about this article at this moment?
Yeah, here comes the...
Okay. Thank you. Well, I think for me, the biggest question is, okay, for me, it's like when we're talking about our children and the well-being of our children is, can we make a conscious choice to preserve the well-being of the earth for our children? I think that's a much bigger question than what are we going to do with these solar panels when they've outlived their lifespan, and also, I mean, there's really no health risks for children with regards to solar panels. The health risks come with this like mindless consumption of fossil fuels that we've been doing. So I don't know if this is the right time to say that, but that's my question.
Okay, thank you. And please state your name.
Sorry, my name's Sarah. Sarah Carlisle.
Sarah Carlisle. Great. Any other questions? Mr. Bosley.
Yes, my name's Ron Boslin. We recently got solar panels and they were guaranteed, I think, for 30, not 40 years. So that was a local vendor.
Thank you, Ron. Yes, right over here, Martha. Please state your name, Martha.
Hi, I'm Martha Mitchell. I have lived off the grid in a house that relies solely on solar electricity since 1984. We have no backup. We use nothing but solar power. Our initial panels, which were put up in 1984, are still working at about 85 to 90% of their original abilities. The newer panels that we've put up are so much more efficient than the original ones. Hydroelectric plants have a lifespan. Wind power has a lifespan. Nuclear power plants have a lifespan. Every source, trees have a lifespan. Every source of energy you look at has a lifespan. I can tell you, having raised my two children who are now in their 30s, who lived completely off the grid, that they're much more aware of their power use than their peers. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Any other questions? Bob, we'll go back to you. You've had your hand up.
Oh, may I make one more comment? Our annual electric bill is $2 for distilled water. And every 11 years, we replace the batteries at about $1,000.
Thank you, Martha. Bob?
There's nothing in this bill or in this article at all that compels the board to spend this money on anything in particular other than capital improvements. Today we could be talking about solar, and I really didn't intend to open a debate on solar power because there's nothing in the article that says anything about solar power. But there's nothing here that explicitly says that's what they're going to do with it. So I move that we remove the last clause of the article, which says, and to authorize the board to expend such funds. That way the board has to come back to us once they have a definite plan and tell us what the plan is, get approval for it, and we can all have a nice debate about solar power at that time and not at this time. So that's my motion.
Okay, Bob Wickberg has made an amendment to eliminate the last line of this Article 7. So it would then read, shall the voters apply the sum of $520,000 from the 2021 fund balance and $250,000 from the 2022 fund balance to create a reserve fund for repairs or improvements to buildings, including, although not limited to, enhanced security and energy efficiencies, period. Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second it, Katie Dearborn.
Katie Dearborn has seconded that amendment.
Susan?
We have, the board would like to respond.
I think there's, the only problem with having to come back to the voters for it is that we do know that it will save the school money in the long term in terms of energy efficiencies.
If you do that.
Yeah, can I finish? We do 100% need the security enhancements because the school is not safe to enter given the climate of our country and the ways and the security risks around schools. That's one thing. The second is we have the advantage right now of the Inflation Reduction Act, which really gives us huge benefit and huge rebates on these solar panels and other efficiencies. The reason why it says energy efficiencies is there's a new type of wind power which is in production right now. It's in prototype phase. That could be an option for the building too. That's better for, it doesn't have long lasting chemicals in it. It's better for the environment. And I think that there is also a limit on how long we hold these funds in order to be able to expend them. And so to save our taxpayers money on energy in the future and to get a renewable source of energy into our schools, there is a time limit in terms of both the Inflation Reduction Act and the spending of these monies.
Okay, now we are debating the amendment at this point. So are there any questions relating to the amendment? I see David Clark back there who hasn't spoken. David?
David Clark. Okay, I believe that what Bob Woodford is proposing to require either a special meeting or a discussion here in this room a year from now. It does occur to me that some of these needs, at least in terms of security, could be considered to be fairly urgent needs as far as I'm concerned. And I certainly agree with Bob's premise here that the school board would change their minds. However, I think that we elected this school board in good faith, and we have a sort of a fundamental civic obligation to trust not only their judgment, but also to trust our school board. So I will be opposing this amendment.
Thank you, David. I see Stephen Major raise his hand. Has not spoken.
Stephen Major. I want to concur with David Clark that we ought to oppose this amendment. I think there's ample reasons, notably that about school security, that we want to act on it before we might schedule another special town meeting or wait till next year. And I do want to point out that these series of articles are basically good stewardship of the fund balances from previous years that are spreading the costs of running the schools over several years and or investing in projects which will reduce our future expenditure. So it's collectively, these all articles together are a way of reducing our future expenditures and evening out our budget. So they seem broadly a good idea, and I would trust the board on this one too.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Any other questions? Yes, back over here to Sarah.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that the school board meetings are also open, and they've been very transparent in their process and how this has been going on for months, yes. I've only tuned into a few, but this has been a very open discussion with community members who choose to participate. So I would just encourage, this isn't just like showing up today and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, this has been very transparent, and many of us have been aware of this research that's been going on over some time. So that's all. I just encourage people to tune in if they don't want to be so surprised.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, thank you.
I'm Richard Crocker. I would like to call the question on amending this article, and I think that we need to, there's enough discussion.
Okay, Richard has called the question. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, second by Matt Conklin. It's non-debatable. So all those in favor of calling the question, and it has to be a 2/3 majority vote, as I understand. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, for sure, more than 2/3 said aye. So we will move right on to a vote on the amendment. The amendment is to strike the words "and to authorize the board to expend such funds," so that the motion would then read, if we pass this amendment, shall the voters apply the sum of $520,000 from the 2021 fund balance and $250,000 from the 2022 fund balance to create a reserve fund for repairs or improvements to buildings, including, although not limited to, enhanced security and energy efficiencies. All those in, let's see, where am I now? All those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. All right. The amendment fails, and the motion now reads, shall the voters apply the sum of $520,000 from the 2021 fund balance and $250,000 from the 2022 fund balance to create a reserve fund for repairs or improvements to buildings, including, although not limited to, enhanced security and energy efficiencies, and to authorize the board to expend such funds. Any further discussion on the main motion? Yes, over here. June.
Hi, I was wondering if anyone looked into the zoning regulations the town of Westminster has for the village for solar panels.
Thank you, June. Boards and queries?
I don't know about the zoning. That's a good question, but the solar panel,
We have a lot of land.
the current thinking was to put them on the roof. And we need to do a little bit more research to know if the roof can support the weight and stuff like that. So we have not looked into the zoning if we would need to put them on the ground. Apparently, Simon, this might be a good time for you to chime in. Apparently the zoning rules and the application and all that process would be different if we had to put them on the ground. But for now, the thinking is the roof. That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote on the main motion, which I've now read enough times, I think. All those in favor of Article 7, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. I believe the ayes have it, and the motion, the Article 7 passes. Okay, moving on to Article 8. Article 8 reads, shall the voters approve use of up to $140,000 of surplus funds from the 2021 fund balance and up to $105,000 from the anticipated 2022 fund balance to enhance indoor and outdoor learning environments as well as community engagement for purposes including and not limited to improving outdoor learning and play areas for pre-K through 6th grade students at the Westminster Center School and Westminster West School buildings, providing additional shelter, outdoor classroom spaces, tools for hands-on learning, supplies and accommodations for children with special needs, enhanced landscapes and garden areas for outdoor learning, providing musical instruments, arts and sports or recreational equipment for qualifying students, and providing for transportation and related costs for field trips and or mentoring opportunities for students within the broader community and region. What is your pleasure?
I'm Team Bealsey, I so move.
The Article 8 has been moved, and is there a second? Seconded by Ian Proctor. I beg your pardon, Ian?
Ian Proctor. Just second.
Just seconded. Okay, Article 8. Shall the voters approve use of up to $140,000 of surplus funds for the 2021, let's move one of those back and forth, maybe. Shall the voters approve use of up to $140,000 of surplus funds from the 2021 fund balance and up to $105,000 from the anticipated 2022 fund balance to enhance indoor and outdoor learning environments as well as community engagement for purposes including and not limited to improving outdoor learning and play areas for pre-K through 6th grade students at the Westminster Center School and Westminster West School buildings, providing additional shelter, outdoor classroom spaces, tools for hands-on learning, supplies and accommodations for children with special needs, enhanced landscapes and garden areas for outdoor learning, providing musical instruments, arts and sports or recreational equipment for qualifying students, and providing for transportation and related costs for field trips and or mentoring opportunities for students within the broader community and region. Okay, is there any explanation from the school board? If the school board cares to offer? Not immediately, so are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 8 say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Article 8 carries, passes. Article 9. Shall the voters approve an annual compensation to school directors in the amount of $800 to each director and an additional $200 to the director who serves as board chair? What is your pleasure? Cheryl Charles has moved this Article 9. Shall the voters approve an annual compensation to school directors in the amount of $800 to each director and an additional $200 to the director who serves as board chair? Is there a second? Yes, seconded by Mr. Boslin. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 9, shall the voters approve the annual compensation to school directors in the amount of $800 to each director and an additional $200 to the director who serves as board chair? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion, Article 9, carries. Okay, moving on to Article 10. Shall the voters of the town, Westminster Town School District approve the school board to expend the sum of $5,149,731, which is the amount the board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, with the $300,000 reduction proposed in Article 3, will result in education spending of $21,888 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 14.4% higher than spending for the current year without the reduction using surplus funds. The projected spending per equalized pupil is $23,266. I believe I read that correctly.
Charlie Hutcherson, I so moved.
Okay, Article 10 has been moved by Charlie, and it reads, shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District approve the school board to expend the sum of $5,149,731, which is the amount the board is determined to be necessary for the ensuing year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, with the $300,000 reduction proposed in Article 3, will result in education spending of $21,888 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 14.4% higher than spending for the current year. Without the reduction using surplus funds, the projected spending per equalized pupil is $23,266. Okay, is there a second? Yes, seconded over here by Lisa Merton. Okay, any explanation from the school board? School board? No. Okay, any questions? Mr. Whitberg.
Before I ask my question, I want to make one comment about the transparency of this process, since the issue of transparency was raised earlier, and I'll direct this to the board. You scheduled a hearing about the budget during school vacation week. Now, I happen to be one of those people who work at a school, so that's when I go on vacation, and I'm sure that's when a lot of the parents also go on vacation, so I'd appreciate it if you would not schedule the budget hearing in the middle of vacation. That's my comment. My question is, why the large increase in per pupil, equalized pupil spending? And an auxiliary question is on page 43, I realize there's a spreadsheet there, and it's not your spreadsheet, it's the state's spreadsheet, but it projects the 14.4% increase in equalized pupil spending, but only like a 4% increase in taxes, and I'm kind of wondering if you've done any research into how does that work. I mean, usually your tax rate sort of tracks your equalized pupil spending, so have you done any research, and are we sure that that's really going to be the net effect of this? But I also want to know why the per pupil spending has jumped so far, so fast.
Thank you, Bob. The board has been queried.
Yeah, so there is a frequently asked question sheet that actually answers that question. One of the reasons is there's a huge increase in the cost of health insurance for teachers. That is a big cause of the rise. There's, state required health insurance costs. There's also inflation, which I'm sure we're all very aware of, given every time we go to the grocery store, our groceries are quite a bit more. But inflation is part of it. So if inflation is everywhere in the economy, it's also going to hit the school district. And then there is also the cost of, Westminster is one of those unique schools where sometimes there's like a bubble class, so there might be 2 grades, 2 6th grades one year and then 1 6th grade the next year. There happens to be 2 larger cohorts going into 7th and 8th grade, and so the cost of sending the students to the middle school is also one of the costs that is raising the school budget.
Thank you, Dean. Charlie, you have something to add?
I could add to that in addition to all that, Rockingham has calculated their expenses at a much higher rate this year than in previous years. So the cost for all the 63 or whatever it is, middle school students who go from Westminster to Bella Falls Middle School has gone up by 62%. So that's the hugest increase in this budget.
Question 2 is about the tax rate and the effect of it. Have you done any research?
I can't speak to that.
Cheryl?
Thank you. Well, looking at the sheet that you were looking at, we picked up those numbers from the state of Vermont, and in the frequently asked questions document that we prepared for you, question 2 is what are the implications for the tax rates? And based on the information from the state, the district equalized homestead tax rate is anticipated to be 1.4141. That compares to 1.4369 in the current year. So it's a modest reduction. This is based on information from the state. And I think a related question about the equalized per pupil spending is the fact that there's an education spending threshold that the state establishes. And I think a number of people rightly are concerned about whether we would exceed that threshold. And I think it's important to know 2 things. The state has waived the penalty. Had we exceeded the threshold, we would be penalized, except that the state has waived it. And they've waived it, according to that tax sheet in the book, to 2029. So this is a consideration by the state, looking at, I think, all of the things, inflation included, that are the factors that are affecting the tax rate. But I also want, and we state this in this frequently asked questions document, we have managed, despite all these pressures, to stay below the threshold. We have not exceeded the state's established ceiling for tax rates. So we'll do our best to stay that way. I hope that answers at least a little bit of your question.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 10, which reads, shall the voters of the Westminster Town School District approve the school board to expend the sum of $5,149,731, which is the amount the board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, with the $300,000 reduction proposed in Article 3, will result in education spending of $21,888 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 14.4% higher than spending for the current year. Without the reduction using surplus funds, projected spending per equalized pupil is $23,266. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. And that, the motion carries. Is there any other business to be brought before the school board? Adrian Major.
Thank you very much, Adrian Major. I just wanted to express my appreciation for the work that the school board has done this year under difficult circumstances, and particularly to thank you, Cheryl, for your comments at the beginning of today's meeting. They helped answer many of the questions that I had coming in. They were clear, they were concise, and they were very well put. Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Adrian. Any other business to be brought before the board? Molly Bennett.
Mr. Moderator, is now a time where I can speak about the high school articles for a minute?
1 minute.
1 minute, is that what you said?
Why not? Please go ahead.
So there's some articles that are going to be voted on Tuesday, and I did a lot of work on this, so I wanted to kind of explain them a little bit, because if you don't know anything about them and you go and vote, you're going to think, you know, what are they crazy? But one of the things that has happened in this high school for years and years is the administration has level funded their budgets, which makes them look like the heroes, until we start looking at things and figure out how long we've let things get run down and not repaired items. And so we have a couple articles, Article 7 and Article 8, that are $2 million bonds. I asked for information on bonds because one of the things that I hear in the background from people are they hear all these stories about all the ESSER funds, so why are you asking for some bonds? Well, we got so much to do that there isn't enough ESSER money out there to take care of what really should happen to get the school back up to 2023. You know, if anybody wants to go look at some of the restrooms and the shapes they're in and walk down through and look at the cubbies that were made in 1970 when they opened up the school, we haven't really done a great job at making our school stay updated. It was brought to my attention during a Haver grant meeting. I've been in the high school board for a few years, haven't heard a thing about the science department needing help. And this teacher comes in and says, is there any money for this? And we did a walkthrough of the school, and there is no science room. There's a couple benches and some chairs. They've got no water, they've got no gas, they've got nothing. So this is something that I've pushed to try to do some upgrading of the high school. I'm not trying to spend money we don't have, but I am trying to do a better job at not making it look like, why do kids even want to come here? It's dingy and dirty, it's dark brown, it's, you know, it's time to do a few things to get it cleaned up. So the ESSER funds is going to help us in the interior of the building do some of these projects that are going to make things the way they ought to be. The bonds, there's a $2 million bond to fix the driveway, repave the driveway. The biggest thing is the drainage. We have the drainage has failed, and we got to dig up the parking lot to fix the drainage. If we're going to do that, then by God, we ought to fix the potholes and the pavement too. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to get that done this year, because the other $2 million bond is to replace the roof, fix the roof. Maybe some places don't need to replace, but a lot of it does. And during that process, we're also working on our HVAC system. So we're probably not going to see a new driveway and a new parking lot this summer, because it doesn't make any sense to do that and then bring cranes in to fix the HVAC and the roof. But I only got 2 more years on the board, and I promised my husband I wouldn't do it again. So I got 2 years to try to get this, to try to get people to start thinking about what are we doing here. Because, you know, we talk all doom and gloom, we throw on Facebook what a terrible job we're doing, we're not trying to better ourselves. So that's what my $2 million bonds are for, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Molly. And where could people read those articles before they go to vote.
There's high school report right up here.
Right in the back. So get a sample, get a copy of that so you can review it yourself. Okay, thank you, Molly. Any other business before the school district? Okay, thank you, school board members. I think we have made a lot of work for you for this coming year.